Welcome back. Now, the need to protect children has again come to the fore in recent weeks. The grooming and exploitation of young girls is taking various forms in our societies. A worrying trend that has emerged is the coercion of scholars into sexual relationships by scholar transport drivers. Joining me now is Sibongile Maseko, who is the General Secretary of the Greater Gauteng Learner Transport Organization, and Elliot Hlatshwayo from the ZOJAZEM Transport Association. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us and giving us your time this evening. Now, let's begin with you, Maseko. Just let's unpack the issue of learner transport drivers dating scholars. How prevalent is this, and is it a concern within the scholar transport sector?
Yes, good evening to you and your viewers. Yes, it is a great concern to us as an organization, and I think to every association and every organization that is in scholar transport. It is a great concern.
But Hlatshwayo, just maybe speak to us about the potential risks and the consequences that you believe arise from such relationships between drivers and scholars, and how these relationships impact the safety and the well-being of the learners that are being transported.
Yeah, having a relationship with a learner, it puts the learner at risk of falling pregnant and also leaving school early before the time. And it also jeopardizes our work in terms of scholar transport.
And how many of these cases, Mr. Hlatshwayo, have come to the fore in terms of your organization and your association? Have you had complaints from scholars, from parents, about drivers potentially starting these relationships with scholars?
Well, there is numerous cases that have come up, although most of these cases, it's drivers that don't belong to any association. They end up hanging out with scholars in the parks, during school times, and you find them in the taxis smoking occupied and doing all sorts of drug abuse.
Maseko, just in terms of the experience that you have around the situation, do you find that in some instances it's a bread and butter issue where drivers are offering these young girls money and food and just items in exchange for relationships?
Yes, in most cases, yes, that happens. But I think it's a socio-economic issue when we investigate these things. You find that at home, maybe that girl or those girls that are involved in such activities, some of them you find at home there's nothing, so they depend on these young drivers that has just entered our industry. Then you find it's a young girl, comes from home, and at home there's nothing. Then they depend on these drivers because they are vulnerable. So that is what happens in most cases when we investigate these cases.
But Hlatshwayo, just speak to us maybe if there are any established mechanisms for students or parents to report inappropriate relationships or behavior by transport drivers, and if so, how effective are these reporting mechanisms?
We as ZOJAZEM Scholar Transport Associations, we are a registered entity, and we have an office. We have given parents contracts with all our drivers' details so that if anything happens, then they can come to the office or report on the line that we have given them. We are also available on Facebook, so for easy access to our chairman and our secretary as well.
Maseko, you mentioned a little earlier on that this is a socio-economic issue. I'm not sure in terms of how long you've been with the Scholar Transport Associations and your experience just of seeing these relationships between drivers and children. Are you finding that there's more of a prevalence now than maybe 10, 20 years ago?
Yes, I've been transporting school kids, I think, for the last 25 years. And it just after 1994, because there was a gap in our industry where there was no control at all in our industry. That's when the industry was open for anybody that can come and operate. That's when then this thing began. Because prior to 1994, prior to 2010. Before 2010, these things were not happening. But after 2010, then there was an open in our industry. That is when these things began to happen. And they happen a lot now that there's no employment in South Africa. Majority of these young boys, mostly these young boys, some drop out from colleges or universities. Some finish grade 12. Their parents buy them these cars. Then they bring these cars in our industry. Then this is what happens, because we find a grade 12 girl is 18 and the driver it's 19, 20. So they are nearly the same age. So that is why this thing is happening in our industry.
So speaking on that, Hlatshwayo, I mean, there's an article by Dispatch Live, and this was written by Ziyanda Zweni, and it's of a 43-year-old driver who's accused of raping a now 14-year-old girl, and she was 8 years old at the time. And within this case, and amongst the discussions that were being had in court, one of the witnesses testified that the rape took place while the kids were playing just outside where they were parked. And you also mentioned that a lot of these drivers are loitering around and they're waiting outside schools and they are smoking. Just talk us through the vetting process that your association takes in order for driver selection and ensuring the safety of children in terms of who these drivers are.
When we take on the drivers, we make sure that we get all their personal details in a contract form. We make them sign the clauses and all the the policies and procedures of the organization. Now, you must remember, ma'am, that a human being can come to you looking for work, but you won't really see the inside of that person other than talking, because he'll be looking for work and he'll be showing desperation at that time. So it is within our organization to keep tabs on our drivers and making sure that these kind of acts, we do not allow them to happen under our eye.
So, Maseko, just staying on the vetting issue, what challenges does your Transport Association face in implementing a thorough vetting process for your drivers, and how are these challenges addressed?
As I'm this General Secretary of the whole province of Gauteng, and this challenge is experienced everywhere in the whole province, where you find kids are being raped. Right now, there is a case that we're busy with where a driver who transported a child for 2 years, I think, and decided to rape a child now recently. And we're busy with that case. So what we as Mr. Hlatshwayo has already said, that we need regulations. That's what we need. We need policy change in terms of scholar transport. We need education transport to be part of what is happening right now, because if education transport is involved, then schools will have drivers who operate school kids who are in associations. Then they will know the driver of each and every child in the school. I think that can stop what is happening right now in our industry, because without that, it's not easy for us to really deal with this pandemic. I call it a pandemic because this is what was not there and it is here now. I think if the Department of Education and the Department of Transport can come together and change policies that can help us to able to monitor what is happening right now.
And so just on the issue of regulation, Hlatshwayo, how does your association collaborate in any way with schools and government agencies to improve that safety standards within the transport sector?
Thank you very much. As Maseko has also mentioned, that we need the government to be involved with us and engage and also recognize scholar transport. At the moment, we self-regulate together with our mother body, which is Greater Johannesburg Learner Transport Organization. So that's what we use, those policies that are being handed down from our mother body to down on the ground with the associations.
To ensure that it's all synchronized. So, Mama Maseko, I think at the crux of this conversation is parents and the decisions that they make with regards to where they place their children and constantly checking in and making sure that their children are in a safe environment. How can parents be better informed about the importance of vetting the transport providers and also just recognizing the potential risks that are associated with these driver-student relationships or rapes?
Yes. You know, the challenge is with parents because we have a Facebook page, we're on media, we're on radio, we're everywhere, educating parents in regard to scholar transport. Now, this is what I can say. Parents, before they get any transport for their child for the next year, please make it a point that, number one, that driver has a license, a driver's license. That car that you are taking your child to has an association sticker, and then it has a disc, a license disc, and there's a number plate in that car. And ask the driver for the registrar of kids that are in that car. That is what parents should do. They should know who the driver is. They should make a copy of the driver's license of a driver. And parents should know the driver. There is a tendency of parents calling us for transport. You can transport a child for the whole year where you don't even know the parents. The parent only knows your bank account. So that happens. Number two, the parents don't want to pay for scholar transport. They look for the cheapest car. And all these cars that are not in associations, those are independent drivers. They charge closer to nothing so that they put kids like in overloads in their cars to cover up for the amount that they need. So parents should know that there are officers, that there are different associations in the whole of Gauteng. Parents should be aware that is this driver, does the driver has a criminal record? Because some of these drivers, that's why they come here and rape kids, because they have criminal records and they come into our industry because nobody is venting them in the industry. We are not allowed to ask a driver whether you have a criminal record or not. The regulation, that's why we need regulation and policy change in our industry.